thank you so much for coming out, ladies and gentlemen. It is a packed house today. My name is John Reed. I have the privilege of serving as the editor-in-chief for the Standing for Freedom Center. Is everyone having a good time so far? All right. All right. I can hear your enthusiasm. I can't see any of you. You're a bunch of silhouettes with these lights, but it's great. Nearly 30 years ago, religious liberty was seen as a fundamental right, something to be celebrated. Religious liberty was seen, it was revered as a fiber of the American way of life, so much so that we saw nearly unanimous bipartisan support in Congress with the passing of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. But over the next few decades, America will see a gradual betrayal of this doctrine, this right that was not authored by our founders, but it was recognized by our founders as a divinely authored, inalienable right. That's a hard word to say, inalienable. Inalienable, this existence of this right cannot be repealed by man, but the freedom to practice said right will only exist if we continue to recognize the perpetual threat against it, and in turn we fight back, and we fight to repel any force that would seek to take it from us. Last night, Ryan Helfenbein, I don't know if he's here right now. Ryan, if you can hear me, I'm giving you a shout out. I love when my boss should be in the room and I'm giving him a shout out, right? Ryan is a great leader, by the way. He's done a really, really good job with the Standing for Freedom Center. That's right, give it up for him. As Ryan said last night, he said Christians, and he listed a lot of reasons why the church, why Christians should be involved in politics. And thankfully, we do have people fighting. And they're not just fighting to turn down the flame of history, to turn down the flame of tyranny, but they're here to extinguish it altogether and leave in its place a dormant burner that will symbolize, it will serve as a symbol to say that the only place for oppressive policies in the United States is in our history books. Among the fiercest, the most elite, and by elite I mean like the actual, not like elitists, but the actual elite fighters, judicial fighters here in America, is Alliance Defending Freedom. Over the last 10 years, Alliance Defending Freedom has seen 13 victories of the United States Supreme Court. That's right. Among these victories is Trinity Lutheran versus Comer, which struck down a Missouri program that denied a preschool simple materials, rubberized material for their playgrounds. And why did they deny them? Because they're a religious institution. Burwell versus Hobby Lobby. A lot of you are probably going to remember some of these cases. Burwell versus Hobby Lobby, which struck down a mandate that required private organizations to provide contraceptives. Nifla versus Becerra, which struck down a mandate that required non-abortive pregnancy centers. It forced them to provide abortion referrals. Not after Nifla, though. Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission, which defended cake designer Jack Phillips out of Colorado when he was told that he has to design a cake design that violated his religious convictions. If you've been following me, he's been in court several times since then, but he continues to be defended. Uzabunim versus Procheski, which defended a young college student, who we'll be hearing from later today, after his school censored him when he was trying to evangelize. Alliance Defending Freedom is spearheading the defense for religious liberty, not just here in the US, but abroad, with a global component, Alliance Defending Freedom International. So it's my distinct pleasure to introduce to you a team of freedom fighters, clients and staff, who serve as a guardian of justice, a friend of liberty, and all while doing so as an arm of the church. Join me in welcoming them. All right, so I'm going to do introductions. We'll start here on the left. This is Tyson. Tyson, tell them a little about yourself.
Yeah, I'm the director of the Center for Academic Freedom with ADF. And so the Center for Academic Freedom, we defend students and faculty at public universities and K through 12 schools so that everyone can freely participate in the marketplace of ideas.
Awesome. Chike.
Yeah, so just a Bible-believing Christian, and back in 2016, just really wanted to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so just briefly, yeah, that's what led to the Supreme Court decision this year. But yeah, just a Bible-believing Christian seeking to glorify God.
Chike Uzabunim, thank you. Ellie?
Hi, I'm Ellie Whitman. I work at Alliance Defending Freedom now, so I work on their media team, but formerly a client of ADF's at Miami University of Ohio.
Go ahead, Amelia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amelia Irvin. I'm also a former client of ADF's, and I currently live in D.C. and work in consulting.
All right. So you'll be hearing each one of their stories here as we progress. To Tyson, so you are the Director of Academic Freedom at Alliance Defending Freedom. Okay, that is not it's not a typical area where people practice law. Can you tell us what motivates you to take up this position?
Well, I love what ADF does. You know, we're the world's largest religious liberty law firm, and we do a lot of different things. We have a Center for Life, which protects life from conception to natural death. We have a Center for Conscience Initiatives, where we represent business owners like Jack Phillips, who just want to live consistently with their conscience, or medical professionals who don't want to participate in abortions or do anything else that's contrary to their conscience. You know, we also have a Center for Church and Christian Ministries, where they did amazing work last year keeping churches open when states were trying to close them and say that they couldn't worship like they wanted to worship, but were allowing other businesses to you know, do what they were doing, and saying that worship was not essential. I had the honor of actually suing my home state governor, Governor Kelly, when she shut down churches there, and we got an injunction against her, so 2 churches in rural communities could minister to their congregation on Easter instead of having to go through Zoom. And so we do amazing work like that. And we have a Blackstone Fellowship which trains law students in a Christian worldview and tells them how they can use their time and their talents to fight for freedom. And when we place them in really important positions with government and with clerkships and in law firms and things like that, we've trained over 2,600 Blackstone Fellows, which are doing amazing work. We have over 2,100 allied attorneys in private practice that are out there using their time and talents to also further the cause of freedom. And so those are the reasons that I left my practice, where I was out in 15 years in private practice in Kansas, to join ADF, because we are advancing the cause of freedom, and we're representing amazing clients like the ones up here.
I hope you guys recognize that these are not the 3 stories. These are just 3 of the many, many stories. We have college students who are living their everyday lives, nothing extreme. They're not trying to bully anyone, nothing like that. They're just doing their everyday life, living out their convictions like anyone should be able to. And then they're finding oppression from that. Thankfully, Alliance Defending Freedom is there to stand up for them. So I'm going to turn to Ellie. Ellie is a client, but she's also one of their media specialists. She has been very helpful to me as a reporter in D.C. from getting some good stories from ADF, so thank you in front of everyone, Ellie. Ellie, take a few minutes, tell us your story. What happened on that campus, and how has ADF helped you?
Sure. So I'd like to start a little bit telling about myself and how I grew up. Like many of you, I'm sure, I grew up in a very conservative Catholic home. I'm the youngest of 8 kids and was just always raised with very traditional conservative values. This really trickled down from my grandparents. So my grandfather in the 1980s was a part of Operation Rescue, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, maybe even participated in. But they would stand outside abortion clinics and block the doors to the abortion clinics in an attempt to save lives that day. One day in the 80s, he was out there on a Saturday morning, and he was actually arrested for trespassing, attempting to block the doors to the abortion clinics. And he spent a week in jail. He had 10 kids at home, so I don't think his wife was too happy about that. But he had one phone call he could make from jail, and he called his wife, and he said, "I want you to bring me an American flag and a copy of the United States Constitution." And so, you know, the wife said, "All right, whatever, I'm going to bring you these things." I don't know why that's the one phone call I get. But he spent that week in jail teaching his fellow inmates about constitutional principles and conservative values, and really made the most of a bad situation. So I just have all these examples in my life of standing up in the most common situation, just going to your abortion clinic and praying or whatever it can be. So when I was on campus at Miami University in Ohio, I led my pro-life group. And every year we would set up the Cemetery of Innocence display, which is about a couple hundred crosses that represent the lives lost to abortion. But unfortunately, we ran into some problems with the university, and I got an email from the administration saying that we had to post trigger warning signs all around campus because our display was polarizing and offensive to the campus community. Keep in mind, these are just white crosses. These are crosses you would see when you pass a cemetery driving down the road. But because we were a pro-life group on campus and because we wanted to have this display, they said that we had to have trigger warning signs. I reached out to Alliance Defending Freedom, and Tyson came alongside me, and we sued the university over these ridiculous policies, ended up winning and getting a huge policy change on campus. So it's a great story, but the whole thing is really important because it protected freedom for all students to share their beliefs on campus. It wasn't just about my pro-life group or the conservatives on campus. We got rid of these policies that were going to be used to stifle speech in the future and shut down debate on a campus that should be a marketplace of ideas where everyone should be engaging in these cultural and political issues. So it really was a great victory, and I'm very glad to Alliance Defending Freedom for coming alongside me.
Thanks, Ellie. Chike, let's hear your story, brother.
Yeah, so just a normal Christian, and I was sharing the gospel, and so I actually became a Christian on this campus in Georgia Gwinnett College, and as a Christian who really was serious about, okay, my faith, like, okay, how do I bring the greatest news of the gospel to people, to my neighbors? I want to see everybody in heaven, and so I had the greatest message of Christ to give to people. So I started, thinking about it. Then I actually grabbed some literature, some pamphlets. Was handing it out to people outside of the library plaza. So this was rewind. This was actually the summer of 2016, going into the fall semester, and I was handing them out, and I was having great, engagements and dialogues. And then a security guard said, "Hey, you actually have to reserve a free speech zone." Oxymoronic, right? Reserve a free speech zone to be able to, exercise your First Amendment rights. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of strange to me. And then I just kind of complied. I wanted to be cooperative. So then fast forward, I was, out there, I had the spot reserved. I had everything reserved. Everything was done, and I was engaging students, sharing pamphlets, and so somebody called the cops, and the cops came to me and said, "Hey, somebody called us and said that your message is offensive." So and then they actually asked for my ID, and so I'm like, "I'm a student, guys. I'm not a criminal." Actually, I actually went to the student center, actually reserved this spot as well. They know who I am, and so it was very just baffling to me to see that free speech is really not free anymore. Up until that point, I kind of took it for granted, and so I just felt very, very just like astounded by how far we've gone. We've veered off as a nation regarding that. So then after that, I just really was. I wanted to contact ADF. We wanted to take action. We took action, filed a lawsuit, and they actually changed their policies, but. When they changed their policies, they actually asked the lower court, the district court, to actually dismiss the case, meaning that they didn't want to acknowledge that my rights were actually violated. So they actually agreed. Then that went to the Court of Appeals. They agreed as well. Then that we actually appealed to the SCOTUS, and the SCOTUS actually they actually wanted to hear my case, and I was very humbled by that, and just amazing that God did that as well. And so, but then so earlier this year. They ruled 8-1 in my favor, and that was just amazing to see how God actually honors people. Yeah. Yeah, just how God honors people who actually stand for truth, who stand for Christ, and stand for justice. And so, also just really want to give thanks to ADF as well, because you guys did all the work, and I was just so grateful for them as well. So, yeah.
Thanks, Chike. And if you ever followed Chike's social media, he is always out there on the streets, evangelizing, loud. I mean, you hear his voice. Come on, imagine that on a speaker, right? All right, Amelia, let's hear your story.
Like Ellie, I was raised in a Christian home in Phoenix, Arizona. And growing up, I realized I wanted to get out of Phoenix and see more of the world. So I decided to go to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and I thought to myself, it's not the way that I grew up. I grew up going to evangelical schools, but it's a Catholic school, so it'll be a good transition for me. And I was very involved with pro-life activism my first years of college. I was president of the pro-life group my sophomore year. And as that was coming to a close, I was sort of thinking, all right, all this is done. I'm going to focus more on my classes. And a friend came to me and said, there's this organization on campus called Love Sax. They defend sexual integrity, they defend marriage, and I think that you should think about trying to revitalize the group next year. And I said, I don't know, I'm a little tired, and I want to be able to double down on school. And he said, I want you to pray about it for me, which of course meant that I did it. And over the summer, I went to ADF's Arate Academy, got very fired up, and at the beginning of the semester, I wrote an opinion piece for our school newspaper explaining what the group does, what we believe, defending our values, and explaining why they're important to me personally. And there was, of course, backlash to that, but our group forged ahead. We had a first speaker event of this semester talking about the harms of pornography and how it's connected with human trafficking, violence against women. And a group of liberal activists showed up at the event. I was actually super excited about it because I thought this is an issue where we can find common ground. You know, you're a hardcore feminist, I'm a conservative, but we can agree about the harms of pornography against women. What actually happened was they said that we were fostering hatred towards sex workers, in addition to fostering hatred towards people who were LGBTQ and all of that. And so they filed a complaint against our group and tried to get us kicked off of campus and defunded. And so at that point, I contacted ADF, and they helped me prepare for our hearing and sort of get the word out to have alumni contact the school on our behalf. And my co-president and I were put before the Student Activities Commission for a 5-hour hearing where we were asked to defend our beliefs, to defend previous speakers like Ryan Anderson and explain why he was not a hateful person and that we weren't fostering hatred or intolerance toward others. And the hearing ended that day without a decision. And the next day we went back, and they decided to rule in our favor and let us keep our funding on campus, which was really great. And so I'm very grateful to ADF for coming alongside me and helping me to prepare during what was a very isolating time. And the next semester, we had some additional issues where some private donations that alumni had given to our group were funneled towards other student groups, some of them associated with LGBTQ activism. And ADF again stepped in to help us recover our funds. So we were able to continue to spread our message on campus and make people feel like they weren't alone.
Awesome. So each of these stories is surrounded by, it's a different event, but they're all fundamental. They're all a manifestation of your faith. Biblical sexuality, evangelism, the sanctity of life. These are not extreme ideas in Christianity. These are very basic components to the Christian faith, right? So it boggles me, and it continues to, and hopefully it always will boggle me, why people out of nowhere will be so hostile towards fundamental beliefs that many, many, many people agree with. Tyson, I'm asking you, again, these are just 3 of many stories. How do we see this as a pattern throughout the United States?
Yeah, unfortunately, these are not uncommon stories. We have, in the last 15 years, we've had over 430 victories on college campuses throughout the country for students just like the ones up here. And we have about a 91% success rate. So that's the good news. The good news is the law is still really strong. The bad news is that there's about 90% of the campuses have some unconstitutional speech policy currently in place still, even though we have organizations like ADF and others that are out there fighting to take down these policies. But the most concerning thing about where we're at as a culture is that the students on campus today, they don't want the freedom. They don't want it. When we take a policy away, they demand that it be placed back in place. They don't understand that freedom means that we have to protect the freedom of those we disagree with. Right? That's the most important principle that we have to understand. Why should I protect your freedom? Why do they need to understand that in any country across the world, they're going to wonder, why should I protect Chike's freedom to preach the gospel? I'm an atheist. If you have a country that does not protect freedom of religion, they do not protect freedom of speech. They do not protect the freedom of the press. They do not protect the freedom of association or assembly. All right, so these freedoms travel together. So why should you protect Chike? Because it also protects you. And so that's what we have to tell today. That's the message that we have to preach today, is we need to tell them, why is it important to protect freedom, and even religious freedom, even if you're not religious, is because if that religious freedom is not protected, your freedom will not be protected either.
Amen. Thank you for that. Yeah. So I'm going to go back to Ellie. So when the university gave you grief for a very simple thing of supporting the pro-life movement, you didn't back down. Why not?
Well, I would say it's because of the impact that I knew our group had on campus. We had had this display in years past, and I actually had seen lives saved through women who were pregnant and considering abortion, and they saw our display and ended up choosing life. So there was even one life that could be saved by us taking a stand on campus and by us having this display. I knew it was worth it. So it's very easy to feel like you're siloed and alone on public university campuses especially. But if you can save one life or change one heart, then I think that's the most important thing, and that's why you can't cave and know that people are there to stand alongside you.
Yeah. Yeah. So how has this experience changed or emboldened your position on freedom?
Well, I would build off what I said, that you're not alone. And I think that this was evidenced a lot after I filed the lawsuit against my school. About a year after the case was settled, I was invited to the White House by President Trump to be there for the signing of his executive order for free speech on college campuses. But it was so incredible because I was surrounded by students just like myself from all across the country who had similar stories of being censored on campus. But they took that stand and they felt like they were alone. And then a year later, they're at the White House with all of these people standing alongside them and the President of the United States issuing an executive order which impacts college students for generations to come.
Yeah. I remember when that, yeah, please. I remember seeing that picture of President Trump signing that order, and I saw you. I knew who you were. I didn't know you. I'm like, oh, I think now we're sharing a stage. It's an honor, really. So, Chike, to you. You followed through with the campus's orders to, get the free speech zone and stuff that was like, you should not have had to do, but, you said, okay, I'll be appropriate, but I'm still going to evangelize. At what point did you decide to take action? At what point did you say, this is just going too far? Clearly, this is not about a policy. They are indeed trying to censor me.
Yeah, and really just to keep in mind, like the reserved spots only made up 1% of the entirety of the campus. So it's kind of like you can't talk to anybody outside of those zones. And so to have me get shut down even in that kind of limited environment, it's like what is going on? So basically, I mean, I wanted to take action when I thought that to not take action was not an option. Essentially, I mean, it's literally like it's either you don't stand up and you allow people, you're allowed tyrannical, people to kind of condition and censor your speech, and you're pretty much aiding and abetting that. So I don't want to do that for me. I don't want to do that for the people who are coming after me. And so I just want to, stand up and for free speech. Yeah. Man.
Okay. And yeah. As I mentioned earlier, this case happened a while ago, but it didn't stop you. You're still out there. You're still hitting the streets. You're still evangelizing. How has this experience either changed or emboldened you to continue your evangelism today?
Yeah, it was very foundational for me because, as we already know, I'm pretty sure you guys already know that, we live in a culture we live in cancel culture. This is a real thing. And if you're going to be a person of truth, a person who speaks up and stands up for the gospel of Christ or for justice or for reality, as what Liz was saying, you're going to be ostracized, you're going to be demonized, you're going to be, and so it kind of like developed thick skin for me. And it gave me a resolve in that moment. And now that moment in 2016 has really allowed me, by God's grace, to go out and to really engage many people and kind of go through all the ups and downs and realize that, to speak up for truth in a world that hates the truth, that's what comes with the territory. So it gave me a lot of confidence and a lot of courage as well to see that, God honors those who actually stand on the side of truth. And so even if I didn't even win, I do praise God that we did win, but God's still going to honor you for doing that.
That's great. Amelia, why was Love Sax's presence on Georgetown's campus so important to you? Actually, can you give a quick review on what that club's about and then why it's important for you to be on Georgetown's campus?
Sure. So Love Sax is a group that promotes sexual integrity. We are against pornography. We're in favor of traditional marriage and relationships that stay true to the goal of marriage. So we're against hookup culture and those sorts of things. And keep in mind that Georgetown is a Catholic university. So the church agreed with Love Sax's mission, and we still faced this adversity on campus. But for me, going through school, freshman orientation, the only thing that you're told about sex is that you shouldn't assault someone. The only thing that makes sex good is whether or not you have consent. And what I was seeing from friends in school is that that was harmful to people. And when you tell people something that's not true, it's going to lead to poor decisions and consequences. And I wanted to provide an alternative on campus to those lies that you were hearing and say, like, no, keep taking care of your body, saving yourself for marriage, abstaining from pornography. Those are good things that we should promote on campus. So for me, providing that alternative so that people who have the same beliefs don't feel alone, and so that people who have been harmed don't feel like there's something wrong with them because they're hurting, because they can't participate in hookup culture without hurting, there's something wrong with them. I wanted to be able to push back on that.
Yeah. So in your experience there, what do you think it was that made people so hostile simply to your presence on campus, simply for preaching a message that is important to you and that is important to the rest of the church? Why were people so hostilely opposed to you?
That's something that I found surprising at the beginning, because I felt like we were approaching it from such a loving way. I genuinely wanted to help people and make them feel welcome. And we were basically told that our presence, our words were hatred and they were violence. So just speaking something that someone else finds uncomfortable is harming them in some visceral way. And I think that's what really generated the reaction against us, was the idea that me existing on campus and the university giving us, $250 a semester was somehow harming other people.
So I said it, and I'll probably say it again. These are just 3 of many, many stories. I mean, if we had time, and if we had, maybe we'll have a whole summit where we invite all of you guys in and to tell your story, just because I really want to illustrate the importance of this. This is not just a free speech of, whether it's okay to burn a flag, which is a very important conversation. This is not a commerce issue. This is on campus, and these are young students who are in an area of their life, a stage of their life, where they are impressionable, where they are scared, they're not sure where they believe. And so I wanted to bring 3 students up, or 3 former students, recent students, of course, 3 recent students to come up and share their stories, in hopes to embolden those of us who are in the audience right now who may be college students to take that stand. Now, we won't have to take that stand on Liberty University's campus, all right? But there are students, there are schools within our vicinity. There are schools throughout America who are censoring for ridiculous, ridiculous reasons. And so I applaud you 3 for coming up, and I also applaud you, Tyson, for leading the charge on that. Tyson, you're doing a lot to ensure that these former students and students ahead of them do not face the same scenarios. So what's your end hope for the Center for Academic Freedom?
We really, I have 3 goals, really, when we look at what we're trying to accomplish with the Center for Academic Freedom. First of all, it's to educate students about the importance of protecting freedom. As Amelia just told you, what kids are being told today, or what our young adults on college campuses are being told today, they're being told that speech is violence. Now, they're not being rhetorical. They're literally saying that speech is violence. And when they say that, that means then that you can use violence to oppose simply my speech, right? How do we get to places where there are riots in our streets over issues and debate? Because they're being told that your view is violence. All right, speech is not violence. That's a lie. And we need to educate the next generation on that. And what's so important to understand is there's only 2 ways to change our country. There's only 2 ways to enact change: through speech, rhetorical persuasion, or violence, physical force. That's it. So if we take away speech and we say that's violence, all we have is violence. Right? So what we have to do is we have to educate and tell them that and push back on this fallacy that speech is violence, because speaking the message that pornography is harmful, that's not violence, that's freedom. Right? That's truth. That's what brings healing to hurting people on college campuses. So we have to educate them. We have to educate them also. They're motivated for justice. That's great. But we need to find out what justice is. And we cannot find out what justice is unless we know the truth, right? Justice and truth are inextricably linked. And we will never find the truth if we are suppressing certain voices. We're not going to find the truth about the best way to treat children with gender dysphoria if we're suppressing certain voices. We're not going to find the truth about the best way to deal with the pandemic by suppressing certain voices. So we have to be willing to speak the truth about freedom and why freedom is important for everyone. And we as conservatives and as Christians have to be principled in how we carry out our lives. We cannot call to censor the other side. All right, we got to be principled. If we don't want to be censored, we cannot censor the other side. We push back with facts. We push back with truth and with speech and with action at board meetings and things like that. So that's number one. Number two is I want to inspire the next generation to take a stand for truth. Now, each one of these students up here and every one of the students that I've represented, they've paid a price. They've paid a price for taking a stand. Don't think that you won't pay a price. You may lose some friends. You may lose a job. You may suffer some social ostracizing. But every one of the students I've represented, none of them have ever said, I'm sad that I actually made this stand. In fact, I remember sitting with Ellie's mom about a year and a half ago, and she came up to me and she said, Tyson, suing the school is the best thing that ever happened to Ellie. And I was like, wow. I never thought I'd hear that, right? You don't send your kid to college because you're like, I hope you sue the school, right? That's not what you're thinking, right? But what did it do? It gave her boldness. It gave her courage. It gave her the opportunity to stand on a platform where the president signed an executive order because of what she had done and what others had done and said, I'm not going to take this anymore. We're not going to censor our students on college campuses anymore. So we have to inspire that next generation to understand what's important about truth. Hannah Arendt said that the ideal subject of a totalitarian rule is not the convinced Nazi or the convinced communist. It's for the people who are unable to realize the distinction between fact and fiction, who cannot make the distinction between true and false. The next generation will never have the ability to make the distinction between true and false if we're not willing to stand up for the truth and speak the truth, and then when our rights are violated, to stand up for those rights and be willing to pay that price. And finally, I just want them to know they're not alone. As Ellie said, there's others that have taken the stand, and then ADF is here. This is why we exist. This is why I get up every morning to fight for students like this that are out there trying to speak the truth against a culture that is against them, against a government that is against them, and we're here to stand, and when we fight, we win.
That's right. Thanks, Tyson. While I didn't put this panel together for the purpose of, marketing ADF, I do hope that you take away that ADF is doing some amazing work, not just on the campuses, but in the commerce field for religious liberty across the country and across the world. In closing, I just want to ask each one of you, each panelist, what do you hope the impact is of your story? Chika, we'll start with you. What do you mean for those who've watched you, not just those who are in college, although that's a big one too, but for everyone, to see your stand for freedom, despite the price that you had to pay for the victory you saw, what is your hope for them?
Yeah, just utter encouragement to students out there, and just really seeing that we need we need spine. We need spine. We need men and women who are going to have a backbone in this generation, and God really. I keep saying, I keep ringing the same drum again. Like God really honors those who really stand up for truth, and really it's just an encouragement, because what happened at the earlier this year when the Supreme Court actually ruled in our favor, that just shows you that God really, he's looking down and he's actually involved. He's invested in what you're doing. So, so keep doing it. Stand up for truth and stand up for Christ. Stand up for justice, and also, as we've been saying as well, do it for the future generations, because they're a real thing. Our great grandchildren, they are actually a real reality. So, doing it for them.
Thanks, GK. Ellie?
Well, at the beginning, I talked about my grandfather and how he was such a huge inspiration to me in fighting for the pro-life movement. I actually never met my grandfather. He died 7 years before I was born. But his story was told and retold at all the family reunions and weddings growing up. And that's what inspired me to take a stand. So I hope that my story and Amelia's story and Chike's and so many others serve as that inspiration to generations to come. And we can become these sort of unlikely heroes for posterity.
Thank you. Amelia?
So I want to talk about fear, because when I was going through this and our story became well known across campus, people would stop me and they'd sort of whisper, "Amelia, I could never do what you do, but I'm glad that you're doing it." And that really struck me, because I think that anyone could do what I did. I think that you can't let fear run your life. Of course I was afraid. I knew what I was getting into, and I was afraid. But at the end of the day, you can't let fear make your choices for you. And it made me think, I had heard a sermon once where the speaker was talking about the song Oceans by Hillsong. And he said, "Do you understand the radical thing that you're doing when you sing the chorus of that song? When you say, 'Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you'll call me.' Do you understand that you're asking God to take you to a place that you're going to have deeper trust in him, because you're going to be doing something radical, you're going to be doing something out of your comfort zone, out of your zone of trust." And I was always struck by that. And people would come up to me who were against us and say, "I hope that you never get a job after school." And that's something that my parents sort of expressed fear about as well. They said, "Amelia, you have to think about your future." And I'll say that, after school, I spent a year working at the White House, and now I work in the private sector, because at the end of the day, God is faithful.
When the litigation is done and these cases are closed out, just know that your stories will continue. The impact that you made is not going to stop anytime soon. The courage you showed, the boldness you showed, the examples that you showed, the ripple effect is going to go for a very long time. So I applaud each one of you for that. Like I say, an anthem is nothing without activism. We can look at things that are happening. We can see college, censorship on campus and things like that, and say, "Wow, that's really bad. I'm going to write a blog about it," which is good. I'm a blogger, so I can't put that down. But you guys, we're taking action. You're saying no. You're saying, I'm not just going to say that that's a bad thing. I'm going to say no. I'm going to stand up, say no, and I'm going to pursue the right channels to remedy it. So thank you so much, y'all, for your example, for your boldness, for the impact you're going to have for the coming generations. And Tyson, thank you so much for your example, your boldness, and leading the charge to help. All right, so give it up for Alliance Defending Freedom, ladies and gentlemen.